show, and not often we do an NFC Championship preview on this show, but there's good reason for it this week because one of our favorite guys to have covered in college is in this game, surprisingly, along with one of our other favorite guys who we covered in college, who's also kind of surprisingly in this game as a quarterback. But we had Brock Purdy on the show last year in the pre-draft process, and I got to thinking, can we go through some of the stuff he said and see if he was dropping any clues about that this might happen? Because I remember when the draft happened and he was Mr. Irrelevant, I was like, oh, that stinks for Brock. He's better than that. Like, he doesn't need to be the last pick in the draft. And then Ari, you and I were sitting together in Vegas watching games. Remember that rooftop bar out there? And
it's the best day of my life. How could I forget?
Garoppolo gets hurt playing the Dolphins, and we're like, oh crap, Brock's going in. He hasn't lost since. So it's pretty incredible. And so I figured let's see what kind of clues he dropped, and then also we can kind of use that to see if we can figure out who among these quarterbacks that are coming out, Stetson Bennett, Max Duggan, Jaron Hall, Jake Hayner, like, is there one of those guys that could do this next year? So
it feels so funny about that, Andy, and Max is the king of this. But I will say that if on this show we discover how to identify that beforehand, we're going to make a lot of money as pro scouts.
Oh yeah, we're done. We're quitting the show, and the NFL teams are hiring. Like, we'll just have bidding wars. We'll continuously increase the price. We'll call each other and collude and keep driving the price up as the NFL teams try to pay us more money. I like it. So Max, you probably covered Brock in person more than either of us or anybody else at The Athletic. I mean, I will start with this.
Mm-hmm.
What you saw at Iowa State, did you think at any point this is a starting NFL quarterback or a starting NFL quarterback on a legit Super Bowl contender?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I certainly I'm fired up for the kid. If you've known him, if you've been around him, like I know you have, Andy, like if you just have been able to like watch him and kind of all the ups and downs he went through.
Yeah.
Incredibly likable. Yeah. Dude just went, as any of these guys that do it for 4 years do, like he just went through a lot at Iowa State, ups and downs wise, mostly ups over his 4 years in Ames, and like couldn't be happier for him. The weird thing, and I know you've written about his recruitment before and stuff, like I feel like he was probably properly rated coming out of high school, given like some of the challenges he had in high school. And honestly, guys, like kind of think he was probably properly rated in, going into the draft. Like, I mean, he got drafted right behind Skylar Thompson, who we saw, similar guy, got a similar opportunity this year. It wasn't like
little different results
for sure. But like, I think I was going through this just like out of curiosity about like, is Brock Purdy like playing so much better than he did at Iowa State? And through these 8 games since Jimmy G got hurt, he has been a 67% passer, and he's averaging 8.4 yards per attempt.
It's basically his college stats.
In college, 68% passer, 8.3 yards per attempt. Okay.
Wow.
The passing numbers are pretty similar. His touchdown interception is 16-3 right now, which is amazing, right? And in college, on average, it was like 20-8. So he's cut down on some of the mistakes, obviously, and that's great. But like the Niners are averaging like 160 rushing yards per game during this span. Like McCaffrey's amazing, right? And so is Breece Hall. But like it's kind of funny how it's really, in some ways, on average, like it's really kind of not that different from what we knew about Brock Purdy over these last 4 years.
The part that is interesting to me, and I went all a little bit Ari when I was writing a column about this week.
You flew off the handle irrationally?
Well, that too. But I went to the 24/7 Sports Team Talent Composite to get a little info, because the Niners are like NFL teams. The whole system in the NFL is designed for the teams to be pretty close to one another. But the Niners are probably, in terms of sheer talent, they are number 1 or 2, probably, if we just dudes on the team. And so I thought about it. I'm like, Brock Purdy's never been on the team that had the most talent. Like how often at Iowa State was he on the more talented team? And so he started 46 games at Iowa State. And of those, 27, they were the less talented team. based on the 24/7 comparison. Now, here's his record in those games: 15-12, which is really good considering you are leading the less talented team. But what does that mean his record was when he had the more talented team?
Sure.
14-5. So like that, this is an interesting, opportunity for him because, and people have said it, and I get it. Like, you've got the Kyle Shanahan offense, which is considered a cheat code. You've got Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. Trent Williams is blocking for you. He may be the best offensive lineman on earth right now. Like, this is the best situation he's ever been in.
Well, the thing too is it doesn't matter how great individually he is. If he's in a situation where he can thrive and it works, then you can win at a high level. Like, you don't have to be Aaron Rodgers or Pat Mahomes to do your job in this league. So, the thing that I think is interesting is where would he stack up as a long-term sleeper for somebody who becomes an elite NFL quarterback, or how much could he be a system guy who wins a ton of games and maybe a few Super Bowls? I think that those are two different things, but one or the other doesn't mean that you're not successful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the conversation about whether he's going to be their starting quarterback next year, I think people seem to be pretty firmly in the camp of, you let Jimmy walk and
forget Trey Lance,
or he can be the backup, and Brock's your guy. That conversation may change after a trip to Lincoln Financial Field against that Eagles defense. Like, let's be real here. He's still got some stuff to overcome before we really say, no, he's that guy. But
I guess I'll play the role of the bad guy here.
I don't think you're being the bad guy. You're being realistic.
I watched the Cowboys game very intently because I love football. And
no other reason, right?
I don't know that Brock Purdy was in a position to make a single play in that game, like where they needed him to be the difference maker at any point. Like, can you go back and think?
The play they needed,
the Kittle play,
was Kittle. Kittle made that play.
And the ball was overthrown by,
right. It wasn't a great throw. So, exactly. It wasn't a great throw.
And I'm not trying to take, he won the game.
That was the one play they needed. But here's the thing. Unlike Dak.
But also he threw for 332 the previous week against the Seahawks. Right. So he did some stuff in that game.
Yeah.
But unlike Dak, he didn't give the ball away. And Max, you brought up his interceptions in college. And that's where I brought it. That's why I brought up the talent point. Like, there were times when Brock Purdy was in college where he just had to try to do something. Or they had no chance.
Yeah,
and I think that's where some of that came from.
100%. In a lot of ways, like, the Iowa State experience has actually prepared him for this opportunity really well, because at Iowa State, the thing that Matt Campbell would say year after year is our margin for error is razor thin, right? Every week, no matter who we play. It's just the way it is there. And
which is more similar to the NFL.
Yeah, 100%. Now, obviously, there's different athletes coming at you in the NFL now. But I think the thing that was the challenge for Brock Purdy is, like, and I talked to him about this last season when he got things rolling in October and was having another, after a really rough Iowa game and some rough kind of early moments there, he was starting to put it back together. And he said the thing for him that was challenging is, like, he kind of mentally, like, had to go back to basics, back to when he was a freshman, and kind of get out of his head a little bit, because when you were, like, trying really hard not to mess up, or you're going the other way, like you said, Andy, and trying to be the playmaker and trying to put it all on your shoulders, like, that's when you kind of you get too far away from what you're good at, right? And so he's always been a kid that was, like, really had poise and, knew how to, like, be patient, and they would get behind in games and he would be able to lead them back. And he's always been a great leader. You ask anybody he played with at Iowa State. But I think for him, it's like kind of finding that. I think he's done a good job this year of kind of finding that right middle ground of, like, letting the game come to you, not playing scared. He hasn't taken very many sacks so far with the Niners, which I think has been impressive. They've got great protection, better protection than he had at Iowa State.
But he takes them instead of throwing an interception. You saw that a couple of times when they got behind the chains. It was 3rd and long, and the play just broke down. And he just ate the ball.
And that's the thing that I think has been the most impressive to me that you say that, Max, is that even though he's in an impossible situation and everybody assumed that the 49ers were doomed the second they needed to count on him, he's just had a tremendous amount of poise, whether it be off the field or on it, And I guess the thing that is most interesting about the draft process, which we're going to get into, is how do you accurately predict what people just have it and which people don't, and I guess there are things that you can look back to at Iowa State and say, Brock was excelling in these 4 categories you can assume that he's going to be like that in the league. But when you watch him play, he doesn't play like a rookie.
No.
No,
he looks very, and maybe starting 46 games in college has something to do. Here's another piece of it. So this is Brock on the show last year. So we talked to him. I went up to St. Augustine, Florida, where he was training, and this is between the Shrine Bowl and the Combine. So he's had some meetings with NFL teams, but he hasn't been to the Combine yet. And this is him explaining why he's going to have an easier time of it in those meetings. And there's a name that comes up that is a very prominent name this weekend too.
Coach Manning. So he came in 2019. He was with Nick Sirianni and the Colts for a year. So he really took, their playbook and installed it with us for the last 3 years that I was there. And so we ran an NFL offense. We're doing a lot of shifts and motions, and the play calls are long and lengthy, which was great for us, obviously for the next level. But we did a lot. We used a lot of tight ends. We used our running back a lot. And then obviously you could spread it out and throw it. So, I think we did a lot, which was great for me in preparation for, what's to come at the next level. But, at the same time, he did a great job of keeping it simple and get the ball to our best players. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
So if Brock Purdy and the 49ers win this game and go to the Super Bowl, Nick Sirianni, it's your fault for hiring Tom Manning as your tight ends coach in 2018. But that's basically what he's saying. He was running the offense the Eagles run now.
Well, and I think that's it's worth pointing out, the guy is not pulling this off by playing for Jeff Saturday right now, right? He's playing for one of the best coaches in the league, an offensive genius who I think that's where Ari and I were having this conversation a few weeks ago about kind of the nature versus nurture part of this too. And it's a lot of times they tell you when you fall that far in the draft, it is better to be the undrafted free agent and get to choose where you go and maybe even get a little bit better bonus out of it because it's more competitive for those undrafted guys. What a miracle to fall to the 49ers if you are going to get picked at the end of that.
And for the 49ers, I imagine knowing that he was in that offense, which that offense had a lot of pre-snap motion. So does Kyle Shanahan. It's not the same offense. But managing that sort of thing is not something you can just immediately do. So having done it for 3 years in college, that probably makes it a lot easier for him to deal with the day-to-day part. Because going back to something Todd Monken told me about Stetson Bennett this past year, Monken is a former NFL OC as well. And he said Stetson will be great in the NFL because he doesn't need reps. He'll be a perfect backup in the NFL. Well, Brock Purdy probably didn't get any reps at all until, oh, by the way, you're playing now. So that's the craziest part. Now, when he mentioned that, I asked him to throw out a play call from Iowa State, from his time at Iowa State. And listen to this. This is where you can tell there wasn't a learning curve when he had to start rattling off Shanahan's plays.
What do they get you on the board, and then they give you the play name, and then they take it away and make you repeat it, right?
Yeah.
How are you at that?
Pretty good. Yeah, you can tell me it. It'll take me a couple seconds to, capture it in my mind and then be able to spit it back out. But I think Coach Manning did help me, and he's got me to this point where I can, rattle some long,
what is
lengthy
the
plays.
longest play you would have had to rattle off?
Man, longest play. You want an example?
Yeah.
All right, we can go. Let's go sink right flex, F near, and then we'll go flash 61, Y vista left, X post, with F cards.
Anybody, you got all that? Everybody got all that?
You get that? Russ?
And they don't have a headset. We got to do that on cards and hand signals, right, Andy?
Yeah, exactly. And that's basically he's telling everybody in the offense what to do pre-snap and post-snap, which is crazy. So, but that's what you have to do in the NFL. You get it through the headset, makes it much easier to talk, and they're not running the same tempo for the most part as college teams. So they'll huddle, you can say all that. You can actually call two of those in the huddle and say, run this one, not this one. But he was pretty ready for that piece of it. And so it is fascinating to me because you just don't know when quarterbacks move from one level to the next, whether it's high school to college or college to the NFL. I forget who it was. I think it was Chuck Klosterman or Malcolm Gladwell, which is weird that it would be one of those two. I just can't remember which one. Compared it to teachers. Like, you can learn everything you can about education, but until you stand in front of a classroom, you have no idea whether you're a good teacher or not. Same thing with a quarterback. Like, until you move from high school to college and play in a college game, you don't know. Until you play in an NFL game, you don't know.
Well, and I just think, like, it's like the thing Ari and I were talking about a couple weeks ago. The thing that I always think about is, like, if Patrick Mahomes like goes to any other situation than playing for Andy Reid in Kansas City, like, what does his career look like? You know what I mean? If he's just the guy on the Browns or on the Texans or something like that, it's probably pretty different. Josh Allen, a bunch of these guys, like, I feel like just a big piece of it is, like, there's just so many nuances to, like, the opportunity you have and what's around you and how well you're coached and whether those coaches stay and stuff like that. And I just feel like that's part of it that, like, I don't think we can sit here and say, like, Brock Purdy could start for all 32 teams or even 16 of them, right? I mean, it's like, it's just a very, like, very fortunate breaks here, but he's gone out and done something with it, you know?
Yeah. Well, the thing that we're trying to figure out right now is, are we witnessing the beginning of an era, or is he just doing a really good job filling in and, you know, maybe could take them to the Super Bowl as a fill-in? Because it's like, if they win the Super Bowl, you know, I don't cover the team, but it would be a very hard discussion to have going into next year about who's going to be starting. You know, I covered up close and personal a kind of a similar situation as that in the college level, you know, with the Cardale Jones and JT Barrett scenario. But it's like, are we witnessing greatness, like, being born right now? Like, is that what we're seeing?
Everybody wants another Brady story, and there's a reason there hasn't really been another Brady story in the 20 or so years. I mean, Tony Romo, when was Tony Romo drafted? Because he obviously came from a smaller school, and he played for a long time, but he didn't have the success that Tom Brady did. So
he was undrafted in 2003. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that's like interesting to me, though, is that if you look at how random the schools are for the best quarterbacks in the league, you know, you got Texas Tech and Wyoming. We've played this game on the show a lot. You know, Cal. Iowa State's just another one of those random schools, potentially. You know, it's not like he came out of Sandusky State University or something. I mean, he played in the Big 12. Yeah. So I just think that would be par for the course on, like, what it is.
Interesting that you mentioned Cal, because the guy who coached Aaron Rodgers at Cal coached one of the guys we're going to talk about as a potential next Brock Purdy. So that's good. But I do want to point out from Malcolm McDonald in the chat, this is really interesting and actually very intriguing now that I see it. It says GMs and media up here in Canada thought Purdy fit the profile to fall through the cracks down south and end up as a long-term Canadian Football League quarterback. Happy for him, also a little sad about it. It's true. Like, can you imagine him with that wider field, with the player, because remember, you can have a player running forward toward the line of scrimmage and motion at the snap, and, like, you could do some crazy stuff in Canada that would really fit the wilder part of the Brock Purdy Iowa State experience.
For sure. Yeah, I was gonna say there's a part of this. I was going back, just like you, Andy. I was kind of going back through some old interviews and kind of trying to dig up some old nuggets from talking to people about Brock. And one thing that one of the coaches mentioned to me that I thought was interesting, and something that I think you kind of can't really account for in the draft process. Either, like, you fall for a guy or you don't. But, like, the way they put it to me was that Brock is a feel player, like feeling it, repping it, working really hard at it, works his ass off. But it's not like the big strength. He can call he can handle that call and stuff like that. But the big strength at Iowa State wasn't really like, we're going to put it all on you to run the offense and slide the protections and all that kind of stuff. It was more about, like, just kind of being a gamer, you know, and just kind of being
when that dude,
a really good leader.
When somebody misses a block and that dude shows up in your face, what do you do?
Right. And I think that field piece, 100%. I think that, like, we're seeing that here a little bit, and that's probably pretty hard to pinpoint when, like you said, it is just such a different threat you're facing on every down now at the next level.
All right, guys, let's talk about the guys going into the draft this year and who might be that next kind of late round gym quarterback, and understanding it may be none of them. Like, there may not be one of these for 10 more years where somebody gets drafted in the 7th round and winds up leading a team deep into the playoffs as a starter, as a rookie. Like, it's very unusual. But I do think there's an interesting crop of guys that, you know, when I look at the clues we were looking at with Purdy, I do wonder, where they fit. So Max, I'll start with a guy you wrote about a lot this year and covered a lot this year, Max Duggan from TCU. We're leaving out the CJ Strouds, the Bryce Youngs, even the Anthony Richardsons.
Yeah, let's leave Anthony Richardson out because he's a first rounder. Yeah.
And oh God, let's not get into that. But,
he is, dude. He's going to be.
There's a very good chance. It's crazy, but like
I look
McKee
forward
at
to the
Stanford,
podcast you guys do where you're like, when did we know that Will Levis was going to win a Super Bowl? And you can go back and replay the Mayo videos and all that.
We're going to find some clues there too. Or about when do we know Anthony Richardson was going to win?
That I should get like at least my Anthony Richardson Heisman Bowl money or bet money back if he gets
a first rounder.
Yeah.
Did you do that after the first game, or what?
It was after the first game. I cut out an answer.
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the thing too is like I was obsessed with him before, and then I watched the first game, and then the odds were still like 70-1 or something. So I was like, you know what? I'll take this for a ride. And it didn't go well. But he's a first round pick, so I think we were onto something.
Yeah. So in the gym, one of the TVs in the gym, they just leave on this YouTube channel that plays ACC games over and over again. Or games that originate in ACC stadiums. So on the ACC TV package, and today's was Florida State from this year. So I watched during the course of my workout, Anthony Richardson going from lights out to not being able to hit the broadside of a barn for like 2.5 quarters. It was the whole experience in one game. So, but no, we're talking about guys who had more production in college, but don't have the measurables. So, or have a weird experience. Max Duggan, he's not super undersized. He's fine, but his experience in college is very odd. I had forgotten, Max, about how hurt he was in 2021.
Yeah, Max Duggan, you could probably pick up a lot of parallels there, really, to Brock Purdy. I mean, just as a guy that it's really hard being the guy for 4 years at the college level, and especially with, Brock Purdy really had a pretty stable situation. I mean, Tom Manning, like you said, came in 19. That nobody left that staff, right? Like those players stayed and they built something. That senior class stayed the whole. Max Duggan, you see the big breakthrough year this year in year 4, but like that dude weathered everything at TCU in terms of people leaving and new people coming in and all that, and all offense changing and all that. I think somebody's like going to draft Max Duggan. I would think. You guys don't think he'll go undrafted, do you?
Oh, I think he'll be drafted.
He'll get drafted. Yeah.
He'll get drafted.
I think he'll be drafted higher than Purdy.
Yeah,
I think it's impossible not to be.
That's correct. Yeah. Statistically, it's difficult.
Unless you are literally Mr. Irrelevant again. Yeah. I will. J Titans 04 in the chat asked about Hendon Hooker. We're not talking Hendon Hooker in this one because Hendon Hooker is,
I think he's still day size, 2, right?
Prototypical arm. Yes, people they're going to love him in the interviews. He's athletic. He can move. Like,
is he a second rounder? Is that what people think of Hendon Hooker?
Third. Yeah, like second or third.
Third still. Yeah,
coming off an ACL tear, so that hurts him a little bit. But
I think people will fall in love in Max Duggan, and I think if he like goes to the right spot, I could see him. I could see him competing. It's hard to just like sort of say this guy's fast tracking to starting as a rookie, but I could see him having a similar start to his career.
Yeah, I think the learning curve coming from an air raid offense, which he played in an air raid in both coaching staffs he played for, that'll like we just said with Brock, he hasn't had to do any of that. So it's a little bit different experience, and so it may take him a little bit longer to adjust to the game. But listen, smart people can do that. And that brings me to the other guy from the national championship game who has been playing for a former NFL OC for the past 3 years, who is very undersized, Stetson Bennett. We're talking what, 5'10", 190? Like, he's smaller than Bryce Young. And now if we're talking about compared to Brock Purdy, he's faster than Brock Purdy, probably about the same arm. But he's smaller by about 20 pounds. Like, Brock Purdy has thick thighs. So
is Stetson Bennett going to get drafted?
I think he is. But I think it could be very similar position to Brock Purdy. And that's what I'm interested in is based on what we've seen. Remember, this is the opposite of what we're talking about with Brock, where 27 starts for Brock were against the more talented team. Stetson Bennett had 2 starts in his career against a team that was considered more talented by the 24/7 team talent composite. And that was the SEC championship game against Alabama in 2021, and then the corresponding national title game 2 games later.
So here's what I think is interesting about Stetson Bennett. And I've complained a ton, or not complained, but just like brought up how dumb sometimes I think the NFL draft process is, because I think we just don't watch the tape and we get in love with measurables.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the reason.
He's got an arm.
The reason, but the reason why we always roll our eyes about Anthony Richardson is because we know the measurables. We know he's going to test, but we watched the games.
Yes.
With Stetson Bennett, he's undersized, and I know he has got a live arm, but he's probably not going to test off the charts, and he just doesn't look like the prototypical draft pick that you would have at that position. But if you turn on the games, the dude makes plays. So it's almost like the reverse aspect of it. It's like, is anybody going to turn on the film and fall in love with the film? Or is it just going to be go to the NFL Combine, be the smallest and weakest guy there, and just fall through the cracks? And do we think this guy can play in the NFL?
Well, and how many people are going to say, and I'm talking about like NFL personnel people and coaches are going to say, well, yeah, but you played with these aliens. How much of this was you? And that's what Max, I was thinking about this. I think if you put Stetson Bennett on Iowa State, he would have played a lot like Brock Purdy, right down to the no, yes, like the gun, because he had to kind of tamp down the gunslinger mentality at Georgia, because you just don't need to risk anything.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right about that. This is, as you guys were talking about this, it reminded me, Bailey Zappi had a little moment as a rookie too. Mm-hmm. And that was another one where you just sort of like, how does that one translate? Obviously the Pats liked him and gave him some opportunities this year. And I remember talking with Zach Kitley during the draft process. I'm just like, hey, how's it going? What's the feedback you're hearing? And he was saying that like at the combine and in visits and stuff like that, the thing that Bailey Zappi was doing is he was blowing all these other guys away on the board. When you let him get on the board with these coaches in the combine,
also an air raid,
he's better than the 5 other guys that came in the room before him. And that's I think where Stetson and other guys need to kind of find their niche here over this process.
Yeah, putting the lie to what I said earlier about the learning curve for an air raid quarterback. If you're smart enough, it's not an issue.
But guys, I think that there are other quarterback prospects that are going to be drafted this year that weren't in the national championship game that are like, what about like Tanner McKee? The dude's like 6'6", 230.
Tanner McKee's going to be drafted higher than these guys we're talking about.
Oh, he is?
He is their dream.
What about Aiden O'Connell?
Aiden O'Connell's an interesting one. And his numbers were actually probably better as a junior. I looked at him for the column I did this week and actually didn't end up including him because his numbers had gone down year over year, despite it would seem having
the opposite effect.
Better receivers in this past year. But so one guy who's been brought up, Jay Titans 04 brought this guy up, Clayton Tune from Houston. He's one I think is the one we need to talk about, because this is a guy, he's 6'3", 220, so much more close to pro. I mean, he's big enough. He's the size they want.
And him and I started college in the same year.
Exactly. It does feel like Clayton Tune is 42 years old and has been Houston, like that he replaced David Klingler as Houston's starting quarterback.
We had him on the on our my pod, Max and Sam's pod on Thursdays after a big win early in the season. This is a fun fact on Clayton Tune. He, back in the day during his high school recruiting process, he went to a Kansas Junior Day and committed. And that was the same Kansas Junior Day that Jamar Chase committed to Kansas.
Wow. What a class that would have been.
So there's been a little bit of a gap there in terms of how quickly Jamar's got to the league versus Clayton. But I Dana, from the time that Derek King left Houston, like Dana has been, very confident, like this is an NFL quarterback that is like a sneaky, really good athlete and really sharp dude. Like he definitely has a chance to be, I don't know where like the draft hype is on him. I believe he's going to the Senior Bowl, so he's going to have a chance to go prove this.
He's going to have a chance. And he's kind of looked at as a mid-round type guy. So he could actually move up maybe into an earlier round. Now, here's some stats on Clayton Tune that I think are fascinating. So here's 2021. 2021, he completes 68.3% of his passes. Very good. 8.4 yards per attempt, just fine. 30 TDs, 10 interceptions. And he does this on 420 attempts. In 2022, he plays one fewer game, throws 76 more passes, but averages 67.3 completion percentage, which is about the same. 8.2 yards per attempt, about the same. 40 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, which meant he threw a bunch more passes. So he threw more touchdown passes and actually got his TD interception ratio up. So that's good. Had a better year. Now remember, Houston was 12-2 in 2021, 8-5 this past year. Here is the key stat for Clayton Tune that has nothing to do with Clayton Tune, but has everything to do with Clayton Tune. In 2021, Houston allowed 20.4 points a game. In 2022, Houston allowed 32.2 points a game. It all matters.
The stop rate was pretty different this year. I can confirm that.
Yeah. Yeah. It all matters. So, yeah, that's an interesting one because he's tough. Like I go back to what was it, the UTSA game when he Supermaned over the goal line. That was pretty incredible. So, he's one I love. The Jaron Hall at BYU is another one I'm intrigued by because, you know, he goes into this season thinking he's got all these weapons. Puka Nacua played the whole year, and I think Puka Nacua might be one of the guys you see blow up at the Senior Bowl this year. But Gunnar Romney only played 2 games. You know, Cody Epps was their leading receiver midway through the season. He gets hurt and he's out. And then, you know, but it didn't matter because Jaron Hall put up essentially the same numbers as last year without the weapons. And I think that's pretty impressive.
For sure. Max, can I lob one at you?
Let's do it.
Adrian Martinez. Is he drafted?
At what position?
I don't know. I was looking at a draft board and he was like number 20 on there, so I thought I'd throw it out at him. But like there are some interesting names at the bottom of the list, like Malik Cunningham, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, dudes that were super.
Cunningham just got invited to the Senior Bowl, so he's going to have a chance here.
Super athletic guys that, you know, might not have the arm talent that you would get from a prototypical quarterback, but as we know, the NFL is evolving little by little. I don't know.
Dude with a story, if you want to do the story, there's a guy at the Senior Bowl named Tyson Bagent from Shepherd College in West Virginia. Tyson Bagent's father is a professional arm wrestler. Like, he is the real-life version of the guys Sylvester Stallone arm wrestles in Over the Top. And this is the part where we sing Meet Me Halfway Across the Sky.
What goes into being a professional arm wrestler?
Being better at arm wrestling than other people.
No, I know, but like, do you do specific weight?
There's a whole circuit of talent scouts that got to find you, Ari. You know, it's pretty.
Is there like a gym? You know? Like, can you like push something?
I mean, if all I know about professional arm wrestling, I learned from Over the Top, and basically he had like a pull down in his big rig that he would do as he was driving, and that's how does that.
Yeah, how do you go to a regional event first? Like, how do you move up in that?
It's like a dodgeball circuit. Yeah,
and apparently like, Tyson's dad has to be the promoter as well. Like, he has to promote the events and stock them and then kick everybody's ass once he gets there. So
I would go to an arm wrestling event if you could live bet it for sure.
That guy would you probably could, except it's cash. That's probably fine. Like people waving
Instagram
cash
and
around.
TikTok, it's got to be like easier than ever to become like a famous arm wrestler too. You know, like I would want to watch those videos nonstop.
That guy would break my arm so fast.
I'm not saying I want to participate in it.
I
don't
know,
think I could be great at arm wrestling. I would like to watch it.
It looks like it could be a gruesome sport if
you get your arm broken.
Yeah. I mean, it's no professional slap fighting, but those slap contests are great. Like, my son and I went down the rabbit hole of those on YouTube the other night, and it was spectacular.
What is it?
Oh, you've never seen it?
Mm-mm.
Basically,
slap fighting when people.
Yeah, it looks like an arm wrestling table where you just have to kind of stand there, and somebody just slaps you as hard as they can.
And how do you win if you're the last one standing?
You knock the other person out, essentially. And it's saw
like back and forth.
It is back and forth unless one person, like, there's the famous clip, and I think it's somewhere in Eastern Europe. There's this dude, he's a Estonian or something. He looks like a bear. And then they bring out this dude. It might have been in a prison that they filmed this, but they bring out this dude. He's tatted all over. He's got like eyelid tattoos. He's trying to look all scary. And the guy who looks like a bear knocks him unconscious with a slap.
It would be you'd be a pretty big sucker in the slap fighting world if you just went up there and you got knocked out on the first hit. It's like you didn't even get a shot to hit the guy. You just stood there and got slapped, and that's it.
When we went down the rabbit hole, we found like this low budget American version of it that they were doing during the pandemic, and they had I'm using air quotes here, doctor on site, and this guy, the first hit. The guy is, you the guy in Happy Gilmore who wears the guns don't kill people, I kill people shirt.
Mr. Larson,
of course, yeah.
Right,
and that's going to come.
And I'll count on you.
And that's going to come in handy later in this podcast.
So imagine a person.
Excuse me, I botched that.
Built like, imagine somebody built like that, 30 years younger, and 70 pounds heavier, with hands like that, going against a person of similar weight, but the weight is distributed very differently. Like the dude with the bear paw hands just clobbers the guy, and the quote unquote doctor walks up and he's like, he's fine.
Because I assume that hand size would be very crucial to your ascension. I've got the smallest male hands on the face of the earth.
Now, Andy, you're CrossFit guy. You're up on all the new stuff. Is there ways to do cheek strengthening for this sport?
I've seen on infomercials that they got that. Like,
I guarantee there's something. I'll have
that jaw refining one where you chew.
Oh yeah. No, I'll have to ask the guys at the gym and see what they're doing lately.
Yeah, just let them slap
you. You got to build up face endurance in addition to the strength of your hand, you know?
Oh, 100%.
And what makes the best slap? Are you have to be
Well, there are rules about that, how your hand has to be positioned. It can't stay on the other person's face for too long, or that's a penalty. I don't even know what the penalties
But like you'd want it to be loose because you'd want the hand to slap as
yeah,
and you don't want to make the cup because the cup would take away from the impact.
I'll see if I meet Tyson. I'm going to the Senior Bowl next week. So if I meet Tyson Bagent's dad, I'm going to ask him, is he concerned about the rise of slap fighting? Is he concerned that's going to cut into the arm wrestling?
Dude, if you don't have somebody filming you arm wrestling that man, then you failed this podcast and the listeners. I'm just letting you know right now.
Yeah, let's build them up, Ari. Andy, you can do this. We believe in you.
Have a nice open fracture on my arm.
Yeah, we believe in you.
That'll go viral.
You made me eat a chip that had a disclaimer that said may cause bloody nose, so I don't feel bad.
Well, and then you put your finger in your eye. So that wasn't me. All right, we got a couple more of these QBs to talk about. We mentioned Dorian Thompson-Robinson. That was one you brought up, Ari. I am curious to see what happens with him. You know, he's very tough. We've never seen him outside Chip Kelly's offense. So the question is, was he maxed out there, or would he thrive in another offense? I do remember that, basically this time last year, they were going to move on from him. They were getting Dylan Gabriel, and then Caleb Williams leaves Oklahoma, and Dylan Gabriel's like, never mind, I'm going to Oklahoma. So he wasn't even UCLA's first choice going into last offseason. So that'll be interesting. The one that I think is the guy, the potential guy who could be this person, kind of Brock Purdy type. Now I think he'll get drafted higher than Brock, maybe by a few rounds, but it's Jake Haener from Fresno State. Like, I put this in my column. I'm like, watch the last 5 minutes of the 2021 UCLA Fresno State game. And I defy you.
Nobody has to watch that because everybody already did.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
Well, everybody who listens to this podcast has, and you fell in love with Jake Haener. That if you didn't already love Jake Haener, you fell in love with him that night. And I mean, he took a shot that would have put most QBs out for like a month in that drive before the last one. And he comes back and he's throwing darts. Like, it was incredible. And so this year, I do wonder, what would the conversation about Jake Haener be like had he followed Kalen DeBoer to Washington? Because he would have lit it up at Washington. Michael Penix was the leader, the national leader in passing yards per game. Like, Jake Haener might have been that. Would we be talking about him differently? So he plays for Tedford at Fresno State, who was the previous Fresno State coach, who was Aaron Rodgers' coach at Cal, who has shown that he can get QBs ready to play in the NFL. Haener, though, broke his ankle against USC in game 3, and it was like, well, that's it. And he goes and gets a second opinion, and the guy's like, yeah, you can play. You'll be all right. So he comes back in October and just goes undefeated and completes 73% of his passes.
He breaks his ankle and then he comes back and plays 7 more games. Like, that's nuts.
Yeah. Yes.
And wins toughness isn't an issue for this guy.
No.
Yeah. wins them all. That's it is tremendous. So
where do you where in going through that exercise, Andy, like where did you put like tough MFer in like the it factor thing that you're looking for here with these guys?
I think that's one of the most important things. Because if you are, because these are all guys who are not necessarily, with the exception of maybe Clayton Tune, not necessarily physical specimens.
No.
They're not Josh Allen. They're not Jalen Hurts. They're not, massive dudes who.
Brock Purdy is not a freak. Like we can all say
right.
that. That's
right.
okay to say.
Most of these guys are smaller than him.
Yeah.
Right. Most of these guys are smaller than him. And so, yes, can you handle the pounding? Can you get up and play again? And that DTR actually fits that bill. He's very tough. But Jake Haener, the toughest of all these guys. Max Duggan, very tough. Like that's what excites me. And I just, I don't know what's going to happen with any of these guys. Like you guys said earlier in the show, situation matters. Who you get picked by. Like Skylar Thompson's a great example. He had to start a playoff game for the Dolphins. It's not necessarily what they wanted. It's the same offense Brock Purdy's playing in. He's got incredible weapons. He's got Tyreek Hill. He's got Jalen Waddle. He's got Mike Gesicki. But the results have not been the same.
Also, the third string guy there wasn't even the backup plan.
Yep.
But gives who knows what that situation's going to be like next year too.
I really, really, really enjoyed the draft because it really is like a fun way to kind of contextualize the opinions that we formed over the previous few years on these guys and what people who are paid to break them down from a football standpoint think. And, I just think that some of the most fun that we have in football, at least if you're an NFL fan, is seeing where guys go and the fits that they have and what they'll end up looking like. And I'll tell you guys, I cannot wait to watch the game on Sunday. So
I'm very excited. And I mean, we haven't really talked about Jalen Hurts, but his
transformation
is incredible. Like when you watch Jalen Hurts playing, even at Oklahoma, when he looked like a little more polished passer, you couldn't have predicted this. He looks amazing.
Weirdly, as successful as he was in that 1 year at Oklahoma, I watched him a lot, and I was pretty skeptical about Jalen Hurts up until probably last year, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Lincoln Riley did an amazing job of. I remember talking to Shane Beamer after that season. He was like, offensively, we kind of turned into like Tebow, Florida that year a little bit. Like they just kind of changed into what they had to be for Jalen Hurts. But I feel like Lincoln Riley did a good job of kind of trying to mask some of the weaknesses and highlight the strengths. And I think obviously the Eagles, whether it's Peterson or Sirianni now, like have done a great job of that too. But like,
I don't think
he took
the weaknesses though.
But he took a big old jump too to just
Yeah.
close that gap, and it's been phenomenal. To
I think
see.
you could legitimately say that he is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL with a straight face.
Yeah. It's wild. And that's what, Jalen Hurts, the guy, there was never a doubt about.
No.
Like everybody who played with him loved him. Everybody who coached him loved him. I will never forget him sitting in his locker after that national championship game where he got benched for Tua. As classy a human being as I don't know how anybody could have handled that situation better than he handled it. And then when he gets put back in the SEC championship game in 2018 and saves Alabama's bacon in that game, like it was poetic. But you didn't necessarily think he was going to develop the skill set that would make him this effective in an NFL quarterback, but he looks incredible. So
he's also on the first team NFL all handsome list. So he's got that going for him.
That's exactly right. Now, we touched on this on the show, Max, but we had a much more in-depth conversation off air during our taco tour with Mike Golick Jr. and Mina Kimes and Dan Rubenstein and Ty Hildebrand about Ari's theory that you must be handsome to be a good quarterback. Jalen Hurts is probably the most handsome of the quarterbacks remaining.
Well, still alive in the hunt. Yeah.
Yes.
Tom Brady's doing some weird stuff to his face right now, but he was
Jimmy G would be probably the leader in the
My
clubhouse.
mother-in-law is a huge 49er fan, and she gets uncomfortably graphic about how handsome she thinks Jimmy Garoppolo is. I mean, the guy is a supermodel. I mean, he's not even a handsome quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
like that. Remember that Notre Dame running back who the camera just happened to catch him. His helmet was knocked off and it caught him holding the ball. And it looked like a catalog shot.
You know what it reminds me of? And I can't remember the kid's name, but Tate Martell had a high school teammate who was a running back, and he was Muhammad Ali's grandson. Do you remember this kid?
I remember this kid.
And he was a male model. And then he committed to Cal, I think. And I was like, I'm going to watch out for that guy, because if you're a male model, then you're probably pretty good at football too, because handsomeness is a factor. It's certainly a factor in hiring coaches.
I love it.
It's certainly a factor in hiring coaches.
It is now.
Oh, you know what? Biagio Ali Walsh. He went into MMA.
MMA now. Yes.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, good for. I mean, he's got it in his blood. I mean, maybe I wouldn't want anybody touching my perfect face if I had that face. He's got that blue steel. Like,
well, you know what? And I think what's important too, Ari, you can speak to this. It's important. Think about freshman year Joe Burrow versus today. It's also, I think you're seeing a guy like him maximize his looks over the course of once he gets money too.
The first time I saw Joe Burrow, he was wearing a shirt with wolves howling at the moon.
Right.
And now the guy walks in with leopard suits and iced out necklaces and
Joe
stuff.
Burrow's just cool.
he's very cool.
And he's always been this way.
Isn't
That's
cool.
the thing. That's the way that he always has been. He had people you know how people get all caught up in what people wear as they walk into the games, or comments they make, or smoking the cigar with his legs crossed after the national championship game and stuff. It's like Joe Burrow was like that when he was 16 years old, and he didn't care what anybody had to say about anything that he had to say. And it was, or any opinion that he had. And it's really cool to see it all play out this way. So there are no, I don't know if we want to say anybody's name, but I can't think of any ugly quarterbacks.
Everybody remaining is pretty good looking.
Yeah.
As our guy Vaughn says, hopefully from the tractor, you calling Mike McCarthy good looking? You're talking coaches. No, there's a reason everybody wants Mike McCarthy fired.
Let's get fired, pal.
Dan Quinn is a much better looking guy, and they're like, well, if we're going to let Dan Quinn walk and become a head coach somewhere else, why not just fire McCarthy? And
Hey,
make
you
Dan
know
Quinn head?
you know who else is strikingly handsome?
Who's that?
Speaking of the Chiefs, Alex Smith.
You're right. You're right.
I could go on handsome quarterback lists all day.
Well, I mean, 2004 Utah is a great example of Alex Smith's dominance. Oh, BSE in the chat. D'Amico Ryans is the next handsome head coach. D'Amico Ryans is a very handsome man, and he was a bad man in Alabama. That 2005 Alabama team, he was the best player. He was unbelievable.
Don't get my wife started on Matt LaFleur. Every time the guy's on the TV, I got to hear about it.
All right.
Okay.
Guys, we've got to move on to our random ranking. This is our first random ranking of the year. And Ari brought this up earlier this week when he was lamenting the lack of good, in the theater movies, good mid-budget dramas and comedies that people just don't make anymore. And you brought up Primal Fear, which is a courtroom drama. Richard Gere, who else is in that movie?
Ed Norton.
Ed Norton's in it. That's right. And very good movie. Came out in 1996. If you look at it, though, I called up the list of the movies released in 1996, and I'm like, oh my God, that movie's great. And it might not even be in the top 10.
Back in the times when no matter when you wanted to go to the movies, there was something to see.
Yes.
And that does not exist anymore.
If you look at the list of movies that came out in 1996, it is, probably once every 2 weeks, or maybe once, average about a week, once a week and a half, a movie came out, and you're like, that is definitely worth my $8 or whatever it was to go to. Now that 1996 was the year I graduated high school, started college. So I'm wondering if I'm a little too sentimental about this because of the period of time, but also like a student ticket at Regal Cinemas in Gainesville, Florida in 1996 was $3.50. I saw a lot of movies.
Yeah. I used to go when I was in Ohio. I used to go once a week by myself because I liked going to the midweek matinee at 3:00 because there was nobody else in the theater and you could just kind of enjoy the movie.
I
and
love
pick
an
what
empty
you want to
theater.
go. Yeah.
Yes.
And now periodically, now I can't do that much anymore, but I look at movie listings because I have this nostalgic feeling of I want to go see the movies. And then I look at the list and it's a children's movie, Spider-Man 63, and then you have Avatar, and there's no dramas. There's no, so it's like there's no movies for me. And I understand that people love comic book movies and they want to watch them over and over again. And, I guess Top Gun, the sequel or the next one is going to win Best Picture this year?
No.
Like, or
I
people
can't
think that it's
imagine
one
It
of
was
the best.
nominated, but no, it's not.
I
Gonna
can't
But
imagine
people
the
think that
Academy
it's one of the
would-
greatest movies that they've seen in the last 3 years. It's like, like a remake of a movie that came out 30 years ago is like the best we can come up with. There's
Bro, did
no
you see that movie though.
Well, I don't mean to.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
God.
sure it was good. Like, I'm sure, like, especially if you saw it for the first time when you were 11 years old, it brought back emotions. I mean, I don't.
Well,
I'm not saying that it
you
wouldn't
know
be
what it
worth
was for
watching.
me? It was my kids loving it the way I did when I saw Top Gun when I was 7, and that's what did.
But where's the writing? Where's the creativity?
I'm
Where's the
aware,
newness?
and we're gonna get into that because I will tell you, I'm looking at my top five, maybe 5 different genres in my top 5, and also I'm looking down the list again and feeling like I need to change everything because I'm like, how did I leave this off?
Really great year for comedies. So, like, that's the thing
Yeah.
too. It's like for me, the movies that I miss the most are just like courtroom type dramas or murder dramas, like Primal Fear.
Yeah.
Or like even something like American History X. Now that we're thinking of like Ed Norton, like just great dramas, they just don't make those anymore. But it's kind of hard to. I can't leave some of the comedies. Like if you really want to blow your mind, in 1994, Shawshank Redemption and Forrest Gump, I think, came out in consecutive months in that year,
crazy.
and then like Dumb and Dumber was the third month. So it's like 2 or 3 of the most iconic movies in different genres ever made. And it's just like if Forrest Gump or Shawshank, I don't think that we have the capacity as a society to make Shawshank Redemption right now. Like I don't think we could do it even if we wanted to, or it wouldn't get made
I don't think
because there's no
anybody-
explosions in it.
Nobody would greenlight it
Why?
because
I don't
it's not known IP. That's why.
There's no explosions or there's no Wonder Woman in it, so we can't make it anymore.
I think if you had a super best-selling novel, you might be able to like
Gone Girl wouldn't get made right now.
It
I
would.
think it would. Where the Crawdads Sing got made. That was a huge
Gone
book
Girl was excellent. That movie
became-
came out like in 2015, didn't it?
Mhm.
It's been almost 7. We're going on a decade now.
All right, guys.
Okay.
No, wait.
Sorry,
When you
rant
guys did
over.
your 5, is this like, what was like your thought process on it? Because for me, oftentimes,
I'm glad.
oftentimes I'm sort of drawn to like which ones do I end up rewatching the most? Like what have like
Yeah.
especially when we're going this far back. So I'm curious how you
What
guys
are
look
your
at it.
favorite? These are your 5 favorite movies from this year. You're not the Academy of Motion
Right.
Picture Arts and Sciences. We're not judging technical artistry or acting. If those things matter a lot to you, then great. But it's really, what are your 5? Like for example, if we were doing 1995, though it would make nobody else's best 5 movies of 1995 list, Mallrats would be in the top 3 for me because I have seen that movie 200 times and I have memorized it. So
Yeah. Also, guys, somebody just mentioned in the comment, Pulp Fiction came out in 94 too.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I just did it based on. I also don't know, Max, if the rewatchable of a movie or the rewatchability of a movie means it's the best. Like I could watch Happy Gilmore a million times. I don't think I could watch Primal Fear a million times, but I don't know if Happy Gilmore is a better movie than Primal Fear.
One of these movies I've seen at least 100 times.
Yeah, me too.
And then some of these other ones I've only seen once or twice,
I would
but I
say the same
loved
thing.
them when I saw them.
Okay, so how do we want to do this? 5 up or 1
Oh,
down?
yeah, five up.
All right, Max, you
And
go first because you're the stud.
I think we will have very different lists, and
I think
because a
we
lot of
will.
times I like doing a draft rather than a top 5 because the lists are different. But I do think we will be different here. So Max, number 5 for you.
All right, and let's hit honorable mentions at the end, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot.
I need to. I know you guys know this, but I just want to be clear here. Okay, I was 6 years old when these came out. Okay.
Yes, we know.
So
So,
for
I was-
me, like it was very tempting to put Jingle All the Way or Space Jam on here because those are the ones that I watched a lot.
and
when
then
they
you
came
realize
out.
Space Jam's actually a terrible movie.
Well,
First one's not bad, and then Matilda was another one when
also,
I was young.
like,
That's a
Jingle All
great
the Way
one.
Matilda's the
Great
Matilda with
movie.
Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman is
Yes.
incredible.
Yes,
So
Jingle All
Great
the
movie
Way
for me.
could have been on this list too because it is the best Christmas movie of all time.
I rewatch it every year, so it
Yeah.
almost made my 5. Okay, so
It could
that's
have. Yeah.
Child Max just wanted to chime in there real quick. Okay, number 5, I have Swingers. Do you
All
guys
right.
not have Swingers?
I might have it.
I have
Okay.
I have Swingers at 5.
You have Swingers at 5.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Swingers is a great movie that would never get made now. Like, can you imagine? No,
I had a
Swingers
feeling
might
it would be on
appear
your list
Hulu
already.
somewhere now.
Yeah.
But so the Mikey answering machine scene
Mhm.
Yeah.
is one of the 5 most uncomfortable scenes in movie history. But there's no gore, there's no cuss words, there's no, but every time I just want to
You
yell,
almost like bring in the
"Stop!"
gore.
But it's so relatable.
Is
you
it
know?
not in
I haven't
yours,
done that,
Andy?
but
I
it's
thought
so
for sure that
relatable.
you would be on yours too.
Oh, it's in mine.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because it'll be very interesting too, Max, because like I'm a few years older than you.
Yeah.
But like I wonder if our generation, not that Andy isn't in our generation, but like
No, but
some of the movies.
I was 18. I was dating at this time. A lot of
Yeah.
that stuff hit closer to home. Now these
Okay.
guys
and how old
these
were you
guys
at
were
this point,
adults
Ari?
out of college.
96, I was 9.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, but a lot of this stuff hit closer to home for me because I had a driver's license and
Yeah,
tried
right.
to go out and hook up with girls, and that was what they were
You
doing.
savage.
yeah.
Okay,
I was acting like a normal 18-year-old. All right.
What's your
Number 5 for me, From Dusk Till Dawn.
Interesting. Okay.
I love this movie. Harvey Keitel, George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino is an actor. Selma Hayek, Juliette Lewis, Danny Trejo is incredible. It's an action movie that turns into a vampire movie. Robert Rodriguez. By the way, Robert Rodriguez was like 27 when he made this, which means he was like 21 when he made El Mariachi. Holy crap! So, but this is one of those. I have not seen this 10 times or anything. I've seen it a few times. I love this movie.
It's a great pick. I haven't seen that one. I've heard good things.
So, all right, number 4.
Okay, number 4. I told you guys I rewatched this today as I was like trying to put a list together, and I hadn't seen this one in a while, and it held up. Let me tell you, number 4 for me is The Rock.
Michael Bay at his best.
Man, it is. If you like Michael Bay, you're gonna love this movie.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a pretty easy pitch there. Nick Cage, Sean Connery, Ed Harris, a lot of good supporting actors in it too. I forgot the car chase scene in San Francisco is like unbelievable in that movie.
Yeah.
I was very entertained. It's one that we watched a good amount when I was younger. I hadn't come back to it in quite a while, but that one holds up. So Rock's number 4 for me.
You know, I was looking up box office numbers today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there's no correlation between box office numbers because I guess like they used to have the late theater. Remember where if the theater came out, you missed it in the theater. There was like the theater that was cheaper that was later.
The dollar theater. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The Heat was like number 77 on the list or something like that. And I thought it came out in 1995. And I'm like, you think Heat or like people thought that Heat was the 77th most worthy movie. And then I realized Andy told me it came out in 95 and it was still making money in 94. But like my mind was blown.
Yeah.
So I started rewatching Heat today while I was working on something.
Heat.
And I was like, God, what a great movie. And
did that get you fired up or what?
Oh yeah. It's just like, they just don't make movies good. They just don't make good movies anymore. Okay. I'm sorry. They just don't.
Casino was in 95 as well.
Yeah. Casino was also like in the top 50 of grossing movies in 96 because people were still watching it. But my number 4 is Kingpin. I don't know if you guys have seen this movie.
One of you guys
Kingpin was on my
Oh
honorable
my
mention.
God.
Yeah.
Kingpin is a classic. It is a classic. And there's
Bill
a lot
Murray at his Bill Murrayest.
Every single time I'm like, if I go back to Phoenix or like when I was in college, like if you guys remember the end scene when they all go back to the table at the Amish person's home, and like I'll be like that. All right, I'm going out to the bars with some friends. I might sleep over or get a hotel room or something. He'll be like, okay, and he'll look at me and he go, now, son, be careful with the late nights, the boozing, the lusting, like what he was saying at the end of that movie. And like my dad says that to me all the time. And it's just like, I don't know, that movie to me is just pure classic. And like, I mean, Ernie McCracken has got to be one of the greatest comedic villains of all time, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's tremendous.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And the hair's like,
the hair was, I was very much hoping this would appear on one of our lists. I'm so glad it did. For me, number 4, The People versus Larry Flint. Now, this will be the Oscar baitiest of the movies on my list, but I was 18. It's a movie about hustler, but Woody Harrelson was awesome in this. Now, he'd been in Natural Born Killers. Like, he wasn't Woody from Cheers anymore. This was a great movie. You know who also was incredible in this movie was Courtney Love. She's the female lead. She plays his wife, and it was It was incredible. That I like. Now I like a good First Amendment movie. Like Jerry Falwell's is one of the villains, and but it was very well done, and it was one of those that yes, it was awards bait. Yes, everybody's trying to win an Oscar, but it was still a very entertaining 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Interesting. Yeah,
Good.
I haven't seen that one either. Okay, number 3 for me. And I don't know if this might just be like a sentimental pick. I haven't rewatched this in a while, so you guys can tell me if this is just too high and I'm just misremembering a little bit. I have Jerry Maguire at number 3.
Oh, that's a good one. That's one I wasn't sure who of us was going to put it on the list, but I was pretty sure one of us was. And listen, Cameron Crowe made my favorite movie of all time.
Mm-hmm.
That's Almost Famous.
Almost Famous, yeah.
But Jerry Maguire is an awesome movie. I mean, it is almost perfect comedy.
That is on my honorable mentions. It's not in my top 5. Which again goes to show you that, like, if Jerry Maguire came out yesterday,
that's how good this year was.
It didn't even make my top 5.
Correct.
Okay, so my number 3, and it might be higher on your lists, but I had a very hard time parsing through incredible, well-written dramas and just funny movies. But like Happy Gilmore is the 3rd on my list, and I think it could be number 1. Is if it was about rewatchability. I've seen this movie 1.5 million times. I can quote the entire movie. Now, you will go to sleep or I will put you to sleep. You're in my world now, Grandma. And Ben Stiller cameo.
We use your fingers hurt. Now your back's going to hurt. Because
even when I'm at the gym working with this trainer, I'd go, get me out of here.
Now, here's the thing. If this were 95, Billy Madison probably would be number 1 or number 2 on the list.
Yeah.
Part of this for me is I loved it, and I've watched it a million times. It is very close to Billy Madison. Very close to the same movie.
Sure.
But I would take Happy Gilmore over Billy Madison.
No.
I would take Billy Madison.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're both great. I mean, I like both of them, but like Happy Gilmore, it was more sports. And I don't know. I thought it was.
Oh, hey, Shooter, you want to go to Sizzler?
That's 2 thus far, Shooter. And like
speaking, honorable mention golf movie, because I'm sure it's not on anybody's list, but this movie came out this year in 1996. Tin Cup.
Yeah.
Great Costner sports movie.
Yeah.
The scene of him and Don Johnson doing the long drive contest, unbelievable.
Another
Rene Russo, also a great sports movie heroine.
Another major crush for my wife, Kevin Costner. Current Yellowstone Kevin Costner.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think she's always liked older men.
John Dutton can rock a vest.
Yeah. I've never heard of a 16-year-old girl whose crush is Richard Gere, but that's my wife. So, okay.
Pretty Woman was a movie that came out, and that's
I guess
the reason for a lot of that. Okay, number 3 for me, Scream.
Yeah,
integrated the horror genre while sending it up.
I watched it a year ago, man. That one holds up, man. That one's a very rewatchable.
Forget when they are announcing the rules for a horror movie, as the killer is stalking them. It was tremendous. Like, that was the most meta thing we had ever seen, and
we were all like in that very impressionable, scary time of our lives too.
And they had Drew Barrymore, and they killed her in the first scene.
Yeah,
it was incredible. So. The other bonus points for this because it launched the Scary Movie franchise, which was also spectacular.
Yeah.
So,
do you know that they're making another Scream movie now? And
yes, they made one last year.
I watched it on Andy's daughter.
It was fine. Yeah, it was pretty good.
The main character is your daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they already made one of them. They're making more.
Is my daughter is the girl who plays Wednesday on?
Yes, she's the main character. Netflix I think. Yeah.
Show? Yeah. So Jenna Ortega. For those who don't know, my daughter went as Wednesday Addams for Halloween, and
nice.
We compared the photos. She apparently looks exactly like Jenna Ortega. So, yes, whoever's making the Wednesday show now on Netflix, if you would like to reboot it in 10 years when she is,
there's
Jenna
a contract
Ortega's
holdout
age.
Or something here.
Yeah. Well, she'll have a
now.
perfect
Jenna
Halloween
Ortega's
costume for
5'1", and my daughter's probably like 5'11". So went to rewrite the script a little bit,
but it'll be a good Halloween costume a year from now, if nothing else. But there's just I saw the trailer, and it was, of course, another remake, but it was 60 seconds, and she was just on a subway, and then all of a sudden the masks appear, and it's like Scream 50 is coming out. Yeah, whatever.
The answering, hello, Sydney.
Hello.
Right? It was incredible.
It's so funny because
Andy?
No, I haven't seen it in years.
Oh, it's still really good.
I can't remember Scream and what is Scary Movie, like, because I can't remember
The
which one is
jokes.
because it's been so long since I've like Hello Sydney. Is that like
Well,
from
that's what makes it. So Hello Sydney is from Scream, but
Yeah.
that is what made Scream so great, is because it was kind of a quarter of the way to Scary Movie. Because remember, horror had become just Freddy, Jason sequels and all that stuff, and really gory stuff, and the like Hitchcockian thriller had fallen aside. So this sort of mashed those two things up. It was a Hitchcockian thriller that made fun of all the horror movies. You can't have sex, you can't do this. So that was the genius of it.
Yeah, I fully agree. That's a great pick. That was the top of my honorable mention list. Number 2 for me, it's interesting you guys haven't mentioned this yet, is Fargo.
Also number 2 for me.
Okay.
I imagine it's Ari's number 1.
It's my number 1.
Let's go. All right.
Yeah. I think
This
Fargo is a masterpiece.
Yes.
And if you watched the series, which is also a masterpiece, not the most recent season, but the first 3,
Mhm.
and then you go and watch the movie again, you really get a appreciation for how much they nailed everything in that movie.
Yes.
Like it is from start to finish. The acting's incredible, the storyline's incredible, and it is, in my opinion, like I said to Andy earlier, one of the top 25 movies ever made, in my opinion, and maybe one of my top 10 favorites.
Okay.
You gotta
Good.
eat
I
a
love it.
breakfast.
Yeah.
How good is the? I mean, Frances McDormand's unbelievable, but the William H Macy performance in this is like so.
Oh
funny.
yeah.
Because it's also like so uncomfortable because you can feel his desperation throughout the
Yes.
entire movie,
Yes.
and it's like you can almost like feel like what it would feel like to be in his position. So, and there's a random scene in that movie, and I'll send the clip. Maybe you can put it in, I don't know, that might be copyright infringement.
Yeah,
where
we might get in trouble.
remember
for
the
that.
cop pulls up to the bar owner's house and they're both wearing those jackets where the hood goes over your face,
Yeah.
and he goes, "Oh, it's chilly out here," and he's like talking about down by the lake, and they did the Minnesota accent, and I'll send you the clip after, but it's just like not really an intense scene, but like it's just so perfect for what the movie's going for.
I'm going through the cast, and it's less Coen Brothers-y that I remembered the cast being.
Mhm.
Like they're not using all of their regulars at this point yet. Because once you get to like Oh Brother Where Art Thou and It's All About Cruelty and all that, they're really cycling through a lot of regulars.
It's like
This is
Steve
kind of
Buscemi is like a supporting actor in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, Steve Buscemi was still that guy. Like, remember Steve Buscemi and Billy Madison was that guy.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm glad I called that guy. So,
I called that guy. Yeah.
Cross off the lipstick. Yeah.
people to kill. So,
and then he
but
turned
that-
out to be like a stud. With
yeah.
the Boardwalk Empire and all that stuff.
Nucky
But, yeah.
Thompson.
Yeah, you got some great people from this one who end up being in. Well, was Lebowski before or after this?
Lebowski's after. Lebowski's like 97 or 98.
But even
Yeah,
like
98. Stormare is in this one too, and he's also great in Lebowski.
Like I'm looking at the cast of this movie right now, and John Carroll Lynch. I'm not very good at celebrity names, but he is the husband who has a pretty small role of the Frances McDermott, Marge Gunderson's husband. Hey Margie,
Yeah.
and he turned out to be the main character or the main Zodiac interest in the movie Zodiac, and like had a great. I mean, he's like there's a lot of really good actors in this movie, and I think it's perfect. And I feel like if Fargo came out right now, I don't even know if the world would know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how they did that though, because Raising Arizona was that was more of a cultish hit, and Miller's Crossing.
But this is kind of the perfect thing with your point though, Ari, is like, man, it's such a good TV show now.
So maybe that's what
like
it is.
It works so well as a TV show.
Yeah, but
And they still get the tone and the style and all of that,
Mhm.
right, with different kind of stories, but that's just the way they think now.
and I guess if that's the trade-off. That's the trade-off.
BT Base in the chat, as no one has mentioned Friday. Friday came out in 95. I was there opening night in the theater, in the one theater that would let 16-year-old me into the R-rated movie, and laughed my ass off. And if we were doing 95 Friday and Billy Madison might be 1 and 2 for me.
And
I
seven-
don't know what order. If we
And
did
7
Friday.
also came out in 1995, which would have been
Yes.
on my list.
Yeah,
We can do this again with other years. I'll be happy to.
we
This is
definitely
fun.
All right, how
can.
about next week we do 2022? We'll see how far it goes.
Oh, good God!
That just
All right,
is
all
me
right.
pitching
Some
you
guys-
all these movies. You should.
Some
try
guys
them.
like, oh,
Part of
Ari just
VOD.
hates
Yeah.
independent
Ari,
Asian
what
films.
was,
I was like,
what was your
okay,
number
dude.
2, Ari?
My number 2 is Primal Fear.
Primal Fear. Okay, very nice. So we've discussed that one. We know your number 1, Ari. Max, what is your number 1?
My number 1 is
Matilda.
Happy Gilmore.
Yeah,
Woo!
all right, let's go.
Yeah.
And my number 1 is another one that we've already talked about, and that's Swingers.
Okay.
And so I was like, I've seen this movie 700 times. Like, I can't not make this number 1.
So we're more like-minded than I expect. Honestly, I thought we would shout out like 12 different movies of our.
Well,
15,
here's my
you know?
honorable mention.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The Nutty
Go for it.
Professor came out that year.
Okay.
And The Nutty Professor to me is a comedy classic. I also have Jingle All the Way because it's the best Christmas movie. I have Space Jam, I have Scream, and I also have
Here's
Ghosts
one.
of Mississippi.
This-
have you guys
this
seen
is-
that one?
Yeah, very good. Very, very good.
That's a legal drama about the killing of Medgar Evers.
Here's another one that pained me to leave off the list. Train Spotting. If you've
Yeah.
not seen, that's one you guys would not have seen because you were way too young, and I'm not sure anybody would have told you about it 10 years later when you were old enough to see it. It is about these Scottish, like, very 20-something Scottish people, and there's the dirtiest toilet in Scotland that a guy. It's about heroin addiction. It
Danny
is
Boyle, right?
Danny Boyle. It is a very good movie. Another movie that I really enjoyed, and people are either love this movie or hate it. The Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet. I liked it. I
Yeah.
thought it was very good.
For my wife.
Here's
that would
another
be
one.
top of the list. I'm surprised that you guys both left off the top 2 in the box office this year. Honestly.
Well, I'm getting to that to one of those.
Yeah.
Independence Day. So I saw Independence Day on July 3rd, 1996, because the events of Independence Day start on July 3rd, and I walked out of the theater like, that was amazing. And then the next time I watched it, I'm like, that movie was not that good.
Okay. I was thinking about rewatching that. Do you prefer Armageddon?
No, I like Independence Day to Armageddon, but I'm not a huge. Neither one holds up much for me.
Gotcha.
Two other kind of smaller ones that were classics in different ways. Mars Attacks is hysterical. It is awesome.
High School High came out in 1996 too.
It did. I saw that in the theater. I'm ashamed to say, John Lovitz, baby.
My father took me to High School High when I was 9 because he didn't know what we were going to, and we had to leave. I remember. I'll never forget that. They took after the first 10 minutes.
I would have thought one of you guys would have had Twister.
Okay, Twister is another honorable mention for me.
Okay,
that's just a great movie. It's Bill Paxton, Helen Hunt, like incredible.
I was able to see it in the theater and in a draft house a few years ago, and that was pretty awesome to see it in a theater.
I saw that in the Dollar Theater right after because I had missed it. Like the summer before I started college, I was working double shifts at Wet and Wild because I was a lifeguard at Wet and Wild. Why wouldn't you just want to be there? So I didn't see a lot of movies that summer, and so went to the Dollar Theater like night 2 in Gainesville and saw Twister. So The Craft, another excellent movie. It was kind of a smaller one that I don't know that a lot of people who weren't kind of teenagers then would remember, but everybody had a crush on Nev Campbell or Fairuza Balk at that point. So that was a pretty spectacular.
There's a lot of confusion of what year movies came out, but
we're just going by IMDb by release date.
Yeah, BT Bates, like Titanic was a 97 movie, and I did love that movie.
The English Patient was the one that swept the awards. I did see that in the theater. It's incredibly depressing and long.
Yeah, Mission Impossible came out that year too.
A Time to Kill.
Time to Kill. I was going to mention, and the other was
is it Time to Kill the best Grisham movie?
I love Grisham books
adaptation.
So that's interesting. Runaway Jury was good too. I feel like was not
that Thing You Do came out.
Pelican
that
Brief was not bad too.
That
thing you so that was the one I was texting my buddies. Shout out to Zim who mentioned this. Like this is and Will they mentioned I needed to watch this. Have I missed That Thing You Do?
Oh, That Thing You Do is a great movie.
Was it just a TV movie?
No.
I mean, I've seen it a few times.
It's Tom Hanks. It's a movie about a one-hit wonder. The band's actually called The Wonders. I believe the guy who's since passed away, who was from Fountains of Wayne, wrote the song, which was catchy as hell. Like it actually became a minor hit. But yeah, Sling Blade
Sling
was
Blade,
this year.
yeah.
I've never seen that one. But
I've seen it once a
heard
long
it's
time
good.
ago. Yeah.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. And it doesn't really count as a movie that you would see in the theater, but Paradise
Barbed Wire?
Lost.
Yeah, obviously.
Barbed Wire. I still have that on
Barbed Wire.
VHS. Yeah.
Cable Guy before we
Cable Guy. Yeah.
Yeah, Cable
run
Guy
out of-
was good.
But yes, go with Paradise Lost because you're
Did
right
you ever
about
watch
this.
that, Andy?
Yeah. Yeah, this is the West Memphis 3, right?
It was the first documentary. It was a documentary on HBO about the West Memphis 3, and they did it. And there was a brutal crime that involved the murder of 3 children, and then 3 other kids were picked up for doing it because they had Metallica T-shirts and like were into heavy metal, and they were accused of being Satanists. And then 10 years later, they made another one, Paradise Lost, and then 10 years after that. Not to spoil anything if you haven't watched it, they followed up with the same case, and I thought it was one of the most riveting true crime stories. And it sent me down a rabbit hole of listening to podcasts about it and reading books. And actually, when I was driving through West Memphis, getting off and driving through the neighborhood because I've read so much about it. And it, if you haven't watched that, it's like the birth of the true crime era because all the documentaries now, like everything that Netflix puts out, is just a murder documentary or. This guy went on a killing rampage in 1963. Here's all about it.
Probably some of our listeners' other favorite podcasts. I mean, true crime is a huge podcast genre too. So.
And I listen to true crime podcasts now because I'm so fast. Yeah, BT Bates, all 3 of them are out of prison now. And it's just like one of the most miscarriages of justice I've ever seen in my entire life. And there also is a time where you just convinced that they did it for no other reason than what they look like. And it just, like that to me, like being innovative in something that happened in 96, I wanted to give it some.
Yeah.
some
And
props.
one more in the comedies. This is not my cup of tea, but for a lot of people, this is their favorite person. Bottle Rocket, Wes Anderson's first feature film. So if you liked Rushmore, Royal Tenenbaums, Steve Zissou,
What about Sergeant Bilko?
I saw Sergeant Bilko on a date in high school, I think.
Oh, so you closed.
It's not the best choice. Honestly, I can't remember if it was Sergeant Bilko or Major Payne.
And Black Sheep came out that year too.
Really? Oh, the poor man's Tommy Boy.
You got to go all the way down on these lists because back in the 90s, there were so many good movies that like funny ones that kind of caught on.
That like we ended up seeing on VHS and stuff.
Yeah, that we brushed off that turned into classics.
You know what else was this year? Because Cruise was in Jerry Maguire, but Cruise was also in Mission Impossible this year. The first one where he drops down on almost drops all the way to the floor and he's hanging over there. As the first like in crazy Tom Cruise stunt movie.
Yeah. Yep.
BSE. There's a lot of bad movies in '96, but there's a lot of good ones too. And that's
Don't Be a Menace in South Central while drinking your
juice in the hood. Yep.
That came out. Jingle All the Way is number 126. That's not complete.
Just wrong.
Yeah, we're gonna have to pick a different year.
Also, the Marky Mark movie Fear with Reese Witherspoon.
Yes,
was 96.
Yes, that was a good movie, and that was before Boogie Nights. I think Boogie Nights was 97, and that was where people really started taking Mark Wahlberg seriously as an actor. But yeah, that like I said, movie tickets were $350 for students in Gainesville, Florida back then. So I saw a lot of movies in 96 and 97.
One more that came out, and this is just a childhood thing for me. I'm sure you saw this when you were a child, Max. Did you ever see Jack with Robin Williams?
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
Where he's got this disorder as a kid where he grows up and looks like a 40-year-old man, but is an elementary school kid and like makes friends with all the other elementary school kids.
At some point.
Man, that's a good one.
I was gonna say I was trying to go back through the kids ones from '96, and Hunchback of Notre Dame was another one. I'm sure I watched many times back then.
Well, we'll do another one with you guys where we go, maybe 2005 or 2006, where you were the age I was in 96, where they're kind of very much in the wheelhouse, very sentimental picks. I was still going to a lot of movies, and basically once my first child was born, I stopped going to movies. Like,
I'm sad to admit
I saw The Hangover in the theater, and then I didn't see a movie in the theater again for a long, long time.
Yeah, we got pregnant during COVID, so like that was kind of the double whammy of like no more movies, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we will have more
Wedding Crashers came out in 05, so it's just it's a wrap.
So for me, Ari, I'm curious how this was for you.
From the Stripes disease of great first hour, train wreck second hour. But go ahead.
What about Chaz? Come on, hold on. For me, middle school, they open up a mall. And so middle school Fridays, you would go to a movie every week. So that's kind of where it hits for me, Andy. Was that the same for you, Ari?
Yeah, right. There was a shopping center 10 minutes from where I live called Desert Ridge that just opened like when I was in middle school going into high school, and they had an AMC 30 there, and that was like when IMAX was first starting. So like that was a thing too, where they had a deal if you were a student or you could show your ID or whatever that you could go. And my best friend growing up was a huge like his favorite thing to do. And he was like the kid that like had movie posters on his wall, and he was like obsessed with films. And so that's what we used to do every week. I think I probably went to 5 or 6 movies a month, if we're being honest. So yeah. It's a shame I haven't been to the theater in 2 years now.
Well,
the last movie I saw was the movie that had Denzel Washington and Jared Leto in it. Remember what I'm talking about? It's like a murder. There's a cop, and
that went right to HBO, didn't it?
No, I saw it in. I saw
what's
it in
the
the
movie
theater.
I just watched Jared Leto in, and I was like, "That's Jared Leto." He doesn't look anything. He's playing a schlub, and he doesn't look anything like Jared Leto.
Did you watch the Gucci movie?
The Gucci movie.
Yes, the House of Gucci. That was a
he did a great job, because that was that was a good
The
movie.
last one we saw in theaters was The Menu, and you guys can stream that now. That one's actually great.
No, we watched that the other night. The Menu is a great movie.
Great.
And Max, we're not going to spoil anything, but the thing that gets eaten at the end, I was cheering.
Yes. that she orders, or the final offering
that she chomps down on at the very end.
Yeah.
Yes.
People got to see that. I think it's streaming on HBO now.
It's on HBO Max. It's very good. Ray Fiennes is John Leguizamo's in it. My wife goes, "How old is John Leguizamo?" And we looked at he's 62.
Wow.
He looks like he's 35 still.
Yeah, Nicholas Hoult. That one's
Anya Joy-Taylor is she's the star, and if you've seen Queen's Gambit.
I think you guys would like this one.
Yeah, okay, I'll check it out.
I don't know if Ari's gonna like it. I'm not going to give anything away, but I don't know.
I mean, if Max suggests it, then I'll give him the respect.
There's a genre thing, because you're a genre guy.
I'm a genre guy.
Yeah, so we'll see. I eagerly await your review. But folks listening, folks in the chat, you know where to find us. We're going to be doing random rankings throughout the offseason. Doesn't have to be movies, doesn't have to be music, doesn't have to be food, could be anything. You throw it at us, and we will do this. And we will obviously still be talking tons of college football. But, when we get down into the back half of the show, where we're here with our hardcores, random ranking is a way to go.
It's a staple of the Staple Show.
Exactly. So cannot wait. Enjoy the championship games. Enjoy watching Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. It's going to be fun. And we will talk to you again on Monday.